Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News with Chewy and Chloe Swarbrick. Chloe, welcome. Welcome to our whānau. Welcome to our house and our family.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, and I got to say, no one has ever seen Chewy in a suit. So Chewy's got dressed up.
I was told to be on best behaviour.
Oh, yeah? What does that mean? Am I? Let's see what comes of it. No, I was just going to say though, the house attire has been relaxed in the past sitting year, which means that you don't actually have to wear a tie anymore, mate.
Oh, cool, man.
Oh,
I'm just
that's the only green bit that I had.
Oh, they've even themed. I'm just most interested in what's on the bottom half, Chewy. Are you suited up altogether?
No, I am newsreadering it today. I am definitely shorts.
Very
I've ruined
good.
the magic, I know.
Now, look, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you're not uncomfortable with the title, but you are a favourite of what we're doing. And we asked for the last couple of weeks, for our last week before we break up for the year, let's get some of our favourites in. You know, punters, people watching and listening, who are your favourites? And hands down, you're at the top of that list to the people watching and listening. So we're very happy we were able to grab you and say good day to you in one of the last couple of shows of the year. So thank you. Thank you for coming on board.
Too much. No, that's very kind. Thank you, guys.
Tell us where you're at the moment. Tell us exactly what's going on, because you're at work right now and you've given us a 20 minutes or half hour. So what's happening?
I am. I'm currently in Whanganui-a-Tara in Wellington in Parliament. I'm in my office. We are sitting under urgency as the National Party Act New Zealand First Three Scrooge government rams through a bunch of legislation before Christmas. Those kind of treats or lumps of coal in the stocking include the return of 90-day trials for workers, as well as the repeal of fair pay agreements last week and the clean car discount last week as well. But currently we are debating and have one of our amazing new MPs, Lan Farn, who's a former Environment Canterbury councillor, leading the charge for us in opposing the repeal of the natural and built environments and spatial planning legislation, which were two of the three pieces of law that replaced the RMA. So we've gone back to the future, to the RMA 1991, I believe it is, and that's what's presently being debated downstairs for the next hour.
Goodness me. Chewy was just saying to me, and Chewy's across this more than me, some laws being passed under urgency at the moment. Chewy, do you want to bring up what they were, and maybe Chloe can speak to those?
Yep, I can do that once I remember where I put them.
Just tell us what they were and we can bring it up.
So I was reading that they are trying to shit can this report that the IRD has been working on.
Yes, I can tell you all about this.
Taxation.
So heads up for everybody. We had that report came out from the IRD that was, I guess, given to them by Labor to please all by the government, and you may have been a part of it as well. And I'm pretty sure, true, that's the one where they said the 311 richest families in New Zealand only pay something like 15% or 18% tax overall. And my understanding is National's trying to pass under urgency now for that not to be released. Have we got it right? What's going on, Chloe?
Yeah, so obviously in the last term of government, the Greens were pushing Labor to actually do something about what is our foundationally unfair tax system. While we didn't manage to get that through, we did manage to get, with the then Minister for Revenue, the Honourable David Parker, a commitment to greater transparency within our tax system, which then resulted in a huge piece of work by the Inland Revenue Department and subsidiary papers and research by Treasury, which told us, I think, what a lot of New Zealanders have suspected for a really long time, which is that our tax system is, in fact, fundamentally unfair. So you bang on, Pat. What it found is that the top 311 families in this country own combined, I think it's $85 billion, which is more wealth than the bottom 2.5 million New Zealanders. But that's obviously not an accident. That is a result of our tax system, which disproportionately benefits those who accumulate wealth off of holding capital, i.e. properties, shares, or otherwise, as opposed to those who earn their income via work. And what that meant is that the top 311 families pay an effective tax rate less than half of that of the average New Zealander. It also found a number of other really important things, such as how that has massive ramifications for productivity, which obviously the right of our politics tend to pretend that they care about, but don't really want to fix in terms of the fundamentals of our tax system. So in the wake of that report, David Parker shaped up this piece of legislation called the Tax Principles Bill, now Act, which required ARD to produce a piece of reporting every year to talk to 5 core principles, which included things like equity, to basically give greater transparency to the public debate and, information, God forbid, so that we're all actually having a more informed discussion about what kind of economic levers we want to be using to achieve the supposed economy that all of us want in the first place. And now the Nats are repealing it under urgency just before Christmas. So yeah, that'll probably be up. We're potentially sitting until midnight tomorrow. So I'll be a good fight in the chamber, making the case that it's ridiculous, because I sat on Finance and Expenditure Committee when this bill was going through, and the Nats didn't oppose any of the principles within the legislation that IRD would be required to report against. They just were opposed to the presentation of this information in an easily digestible public format. So
the results
problem, right?
This seems to be a government who doesn't want us to see their workings on most things, with the regulatory impact statements going away. But they don't want us to see the results presented to us, maybe because there are some people within the national circle, maybe one step removed from them, who probably aren't that stoked that those results got leaked, or not even leaked, but put out there.
Yeah, it's abundantly clear, actually. And, you have it on public record who the largest donors are to, those 3 parties of government now. And it just so happens there's quite a lot of alignment with the rich listers, who probably, you can assume, were part of those 311 families. And I don't think that's an incredibly long bow. This is how politics works, right? We get the politics that we think that we deserve. And this is kind of my call to action for everybody who's frustrated, is do not get disenchanted and disengaged, because that's exactly what the bad guys want. Now is the time to get proactively involved and engaged, and don't let them get away with it.
Yeah, I saw them framing this as if, like, hey, we've got to tighten our belts and we've got to be careful with how we're spending our money, and the IRD should be focused on this thing. It's not like we're right at the end of the year that they're doing that work now, right? All they have to do is hand over the report. So it's obvious that it's not about saving money, it's preventing that information coming through.
Well, I mean, this is the great irony that I think all of us kind of have to grapple with this government. And this is the frustration that I felt from, the speech from the throne a few weeks ago. I've never been one to be able to really hide what I'm thinking or feeling. But
we all saw the photos, Chloe.
And I was just listening to what is this really old school tradition whereby you have effectively the Prime Minister write in first person, or the Prime Minister's officials write in first person a speech, which is then given to the monarch and delivered by the Governor-General and presented by the Governor-General as though it's the Governor-General speaking on behalf of. Archaic institution as it is. But they were talking on the one hand about these things that they apparently wanted to achieve, i.e. affordable housing or higher wages, but then prescribing policies which, evidently will not achieve those outcomes. And it just felt super Orwellian to me. And you see that, speaking to your point, Chewie, around wasting money despite talking about wanting to save taxpayers' money, you see that in the kind of te reo, removal of te reo names in many of our public institutions. You see that in the wind back of a lot of different work programs, like Te Pukenga, for example, where we know that each of the polytechnic institutions in their own accord don't have the financial kind of sustainability to be able to run themselves. You see it as well in this IRD kind of quashing of or binning of this work, which already would have been undertaken over the past several months. So, it'll be interesting to see whether it ever actually gets to see the light of day. And I'll be putting in a number of Official Information Act requests to make sure that we can get what we can.
Well, just know if you ever want to leak anything, you've got a place to leak it. You can just forward stuff through. It's easy enough. Sorry, Joe, you go.
I saw this idea bandied around on Reddit. So because that report's all ready to go and the government's sort of blocking it, would you be able to official information request the draft?
Yeah, you would. And then it'd be a matter of whether they, I'm sure they'd withhold certain things under the Official Information Act. But yeah, you almost definitely would. And then it would take, about a month or so to get that out into the public arena, a month of working days, mind. So yeah, a little bit longer than that. But then we would also be able to get access to, for example, all of the advice and the correspondence that ministers have put out there as to why they don't want this out in the public arena. And this is kind of the point, actually, that James Shaw, obviously co-leader of the Greens, former climate minister, was prosecuting in the House earlier today on the clean car discount. The government has a responsibility under the Zero Carbon Act, which we obviously got through in our first term in relationship with government in 2017 to 2020. It has a responsibility under the emissions reductions plans to make sure that it is consistently kind of having policies in place to achieve those emissions reductions plans. And when it removes or revokes one of those plans, it has to put something else in place which will fill that gap. But it didn't seem as though our new Minister of Transport and Minister for Auckland, the Honourable Simeon Brown, was particularly across that point. And that's because he rushed to do it without actually properly contemplating or considering officials' advice. And I think this is something which is probably going to come crashing down around their ears with this new government, is that they've spoken a lot about evidence and data, but not really applied it in the real world. And it's, a lot of things really upset me and anger me in politics, right? But intellectual disingenuousness is definitely up there.
One of the things that gets me most of all is the hypocrisy. You just mentioned real world. When I heard on the radio a couple of days ago that there was questionings of Mr. Luxon, because whilst he's telling all the public servants to pay for learning Te Reo, he was getting Te Reo for free, being paid for by us. I put a message out on my Instagrams. I said, oh my God, for the commentator out there, Luxon is just the gift that keeps on giving. And it would be hilarious if it wasn't so fucking serious for the vulnerable, for Māori, for people in those marginalized groups. So it can't be hilarious. And I'm not one of those groups. So I have to be careful with that. But from the outside looking in, all we're seeing is them saying something and doing the other. Like we're going to drive down smoking while we take away the smoke-free 2025. It just goes on and on and on. What is it like from the inside, looking across the house to that kind of thing?
Oh, it feels like gaslighting. Kind of as I was alluding to before, Pat, I wouldn't say that I necessarily respect people who prosecute and push forward policies that I know are going to hurt people, but I find it especially egregious when people are pretending as though they're going to do one thing while knowing full well that the evidence says that the kind of line of policy that they are pushing is going to do exactly the opposite. And we saw that, for example, with the government continuing to hold to the line that the removal of fair pay agreements is somehow going to benefit low-wage workers, despite their own official advice saying exactly the opposite. So yeah, I don't really know how to necessarily communicate to the public that they should still hold faith in our political institutions when, the leaders of these institutions are pushing forward in ways like that, beyond just to say that, politics has always been a manifestation of the will of the people, whether that is those who have been engaged in the system or those who have neglected engaging in the system. And it has only ever changed when we've had a critical mass of everyday people who've decided to not put up with the status quo anymore. Better is possible, and everything always seems impossible until one day it all happens overnight. But that's been by virtue largely of decades worth of work from activists and organizers and people at the front line. So what does it feel like? It feels like gaslighting. It feels like insanity. It feels just like every single day the government is intent on lighting all of these fires, and we're going to have to figure out how to sustainably and strategically choose which fires we're sending our firefighters to that we actually want to put out, And then you've got, on top of that, this layer of kind of cultural warfare that nobody asked for. So I just can't determine a rhyme or reason. And that's why, you may have heard in the media a few weeks ago, I had been going through the coalition documents trying to figure out how to summarize this in an easily accessible way to people. And the best that I could kind of come up with is these are not serious people. This is deeply silly politics. And to your point before, Pat, to so many of these, and I was reflecting on this actually with a friend of mine, Te Mahara, who works with Te Pāti Māori in the last term. when the Nats and ACT were doing a similar thing in the chamber, although in opposition at that point. And she was just saying, you know, like, you guys in the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, you go there with the kaupapa on your shoulders, and you really, really deeply feel the purpose in there, because, you know, you feel the ramifications of these policies for your communities and for the planet. But for so many of the other guys in there, it's a game. And I guess, again, that's kind of the key point, is that it doesn't have to be treated like that. There's so many people who think that this is three-dimensional politics and like House of Cards, but like, guys, it's Aotearoa New Zealand. There's 2 degrees of separation, and we make policy on the hoof.
Kieran McElnulty mentioned it last night, a similar thing. He was saying he'd be interested in finding out why the guys over on the right, and I know it's not just left and right, there's more advanced, but just for the sake of expedience, he'd like to know why they do politics. He goes, because I know why I do politics and my colleagues do politics. He kind of what you're saying, it's a game. Why are they actually doing it? What's in it for them? But I want to ask you a question. You've just talked about research and stuff. One of the things we always love about you is we see you on breakfast and we see the person you're sitting next to, be it a David Seymour or a Shane Jones, kind of bloviating and using big ideas. And you go, well, as I was driving in, reading the latest research from XYZ, and it's just like bang, bang, bang. And I just want to know, is that your bag? Do you love data? Do you love getting into that research? Is that a part of who you are?
I am a real nerd. I grew up debating a lot with my old man about everything and anything, and kind of going, but why is the world this way? And he would tell me that that's just the way it is. And I'd go, well, nah, I don't believe that. And then I'd, you know, go away and do my research. And I think my approach to politics, in that way that you're talking about, Pat, particularly in the way that I kind of operate in the media landscape, very much comes from how I kind of cut my teeth doing this stuff back in 2016. When I ran for the Auckland mayoralty. Like, I was acutely aware of being a young gun and having no idea what I was talking about, but I also knew that the other guys had no idea what they were talking about. But I knew that I would have to be, you know, work harder to be considered as valid or legitimate, in the same way that those who get to occupy the kind of archetype or stereotype of what you assume a politician should be. So I have always kind of taken the approach that I'm not really going to give you hot takes on stuff that I don't understand. And I think that more politicians should refuse to engage in debate and discussion on stuff that they don't really know all too much about. On top of that, like, my academic background, again, I'm a nerd, is philosophy and law. So I take the approach that it is always a good thing that people are willing to, and I very much am willing to change my view when I encounter evidence that, you know, kind of contradicts the views that I have held. And I'm more than willing to be challenged on the views that I hold as well. But then when I do come to a view that I very strongly hold, I'm going to try and figure out how to implement that as evidence-based as possible. But in that kind of vein, I think, you know, there's been some really constructive discussions and critical thinking around how evidence-based isn't as straightforward as we once might have thought over the past kind of few years, to the effect that if you're looking at just evidence or data sole, you have to unpack the prejudices or the biases of what the selected topic of research was, who the people who were involved in that thesis, and then, you know, how that ends up being applied ultimately. So I'm really clear, I guess, about the values that I and that the Greens hold, which is kind of, you know, upholding people in the planet. And then it's about how do we actually get those outcomes through applying evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
you go, Chewy.
Sorry. I just want to piggyback off something you said earlier on in the interview. Is I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was basically here at the show, us, the chat, the guys that come and watch us. The past couple of weeks has just been a series of hammer blows of holy shit. They've gone hard straight out of the gates with a whole bunch of stuff, and it's so much. There's, you know, as you said, you've got to kind of pick your battles of what we fight and that sort of thing, and we've got to stay engaged. What do you think is the most helpful thing that punters like us can do to get heard about these issues that concern us and seem to be getting steamrolled at the moment?
So I'm a really, really big believer in the power of community. And whenever I felt disenchanted by, like, particularly this place, Parliament, I, get back boots on the ground into Auckland Central, and I work with people who are actually, dedicating their lives to trying to solve problems at a really local level in a meaningful, tangible way. And I think that that's like kind of how you microdose hope. Like, you get that proof of concept that you actually can get shit done if you are working with people who really care about things, whether that is mutual aid networks or, building kind of education for your community about the history of the area that you're in or whatever else. Like, there's so many not all too long ago examples of how that led to massive structural and cultural change, the likes of in Auckland Central, for example, Pacific Panthers, and the way that they facilitated, after school education for kids and care, and then did, sit-ins and rent strikes, and obviously advocated for immigration reform and all of these other many faceted things. So how do you keep a sense of hope, and what do you do? I think that you look immediately at the world around you and people who are doing these things and fighting against the system, but as local a level as is possible. So whether that's in your neighborhood or in your community, you will find people who are changing people's lives. And when you get a sense of how that works, you understand how that stuff can be scaled up, right? And that's how you get to kind of that critical mass that's necessary to result in that structural change. And I guess to not spend way too long unpacking this, because I was referring to being a nerd, but like, this is my theory of change. So I think that we spend a lot of time talking and thinking about what I conceive of as kind of like the structural sphere of change, which is the system that we're all always rallying against. So that is our legislation or our laws, regulation and bylaws that kind of fall out of that, our procurement processes, i.e. the way that councils and government kind of get stuff and pay for that stuff. It's things like contracts and treaties, including obviously domestically Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It's our trade agreements. It's all of that kind of scaffolding, that blueprint, those coat hooks for how society is supposed to run, what the social contract is supposed to look like. But I think the bigger question in political change is, how do we create the environment conducive to that structural change? So that's how and why I've spent so much of my energy over the past several years engaged in what I'd call academically the cultural sphere. And culture here I'm not defining as synonymous with people's ethnicity or geographical background or religious practice. I'm talking about culture from a design thinking perspective. Thank you to my ex-boyfriend's degree. And that is all about basically awareness. So if you think about culture as a shared set of values, you can come to understand how we can build societies, communities, neighborhoods of people from incredibly diverse backgrounds who all come together to either implicitly or explicitly prioritize certain values which give you legitimacy to the structures that we all operate within. So different kind of levers for how you facilitate that cultural change or bring to the fore conversations around those values are things like education. A really clear example of that is how we'll be having markedly different conversations around co-governance in the next 10 years as a result of New Zealand history being taught in schools. It's things like media, including social media. So therein you can look at the mass education that's been facilitated on Gaza and on Palestine over the past several weeks. It's things like community building, including petition and protest. So that cultural sphere is where I want people to really understand and recognize their power, because that is where the system and the structure gets its legitimacy from, or we can delegitimize it. We can create the environment conducive to that structural change.
We've got about 6 or 7 minutes left. There's a couple of people in the chat who want to ask a question, which we'll get to super quick, but I've got a couple more for you at the end. So, not saying 60 seconds or less, but just 2 or 3 of these that
I'll keep it tight.
Yeah. So Jay Transforms wants to say, Chloe, how would you respond to my landlord in Otipoti who owns 84 flats and confessed to deliberately avoiding tenants with Māori names? How would you respond to that person?
How would I respond to that person? Yeah, that's just honestly really sad. I would say, firstly, structurally to respond to that person. This is why the Greens advocated for our kind of renters' rights package in this most recent election, which would be a rental warrant of fitness tied with a register for property managers and landlords. One of the biggest issues that we actually have in advocating for reform in the tenancy space and for renters, the 1.5 million renters in this country, is that we know that approximately there are 120,000 landlords, but we only know that through kind of gluing together insights that we we get from the Companies Office, from Land Information New Zealand, and from MB's bond lodgement data. We don't actually have a clear set in any central repository of who owns all of the homes in this country, who's renting them out, and therefore who ends up being prosecuted time and again through the likes of the Tenancy Tribunal, for example. Right. So that means that bad apples can go on to reoffend, for example, in cases of discrimination and prejudice. So I think that the structural solution there is the register for property managers and landlords paired with the rental warrant of fitness. What I would say to that person, that landlord who doesn't seem to care and is engaged in active prejudice and apparent racism, is just kind of like, bro, what are your priorities? Like, what are you trying to achieve with your life? You know, what is this thing that we're all doing in this society? Like, I frequently think it's a Spanish allegory where there's this businessman who goes to the end of the pier where there's this fishing man sitting in his boat who's just like lazily fishing, and the businessman says to the fisherman, oh, you know, like if you were to invest in a motor for your boat, then you know you could end up catching a dozen fish a day, and then when you've done that for a few years, then you can end up investing in a bigger boat, and you can employ some people, and then you can get a helicopter, and then you can start exporting all of your goods, and then you can end up, you know, ultimately retiring. And the fisherman says, so that I can do what I'm currently doing. You know, and it's that point of like, what is it that we're actually trying to achieve in society? Why are we all working so hard if it's not for the betterment of the people around us and the planet that we live on and the generations that come after us? I mean, I just don't really get it.
There are more super chats in there and questions. We're not going to go to them because Chloe's only got a short amount of time, guys. So I apologize about that, because I've got a question for you, which you could take 2 hours to answer. I know you could, but it's real simple, and it's an area that we here have been following your lead and following what you've been saying about this issue as well. So I'll just word it like this: how does someone who doesn't want innocent civilians killed in Gaza, for the reason of not wanting them to be killed, all of a sudden become an anti-Semite in the eyes of some people? I know that question's like a thesis, but
we've got you asked for a simple answer.
I know, but yeah, you've been leading the charge on this in the media a lot, so we wanted to give you a chance to speak to it.
The simple answer is that by advocating for freedom for Palestine and for recognition of Palestinian statehood and for the inherent dignity of Palestinians in the same way that all human beings hold inherent dignity, and for actually just even the upholding of international law, God forbid, what we are also doing is challenging power and wealth and entrenched interests and colonization and capitalism and all of those things that uphold the foundations of that structure that I was alluding to before. And that is how you see the institutions of politics and of our media apparatus basically geared towards suppressing any voices that are advocating for that freedom. So my kind of core response to those kinds of allegations is that one of the most anti-Semitic things that anyone can do is conflate the actions of the Israeli government, which are demonstrably in violation of international law, with the Jewish people. It's kind of as simple as that, really.
Thank you, and I'm somewhat sorry to put you on the spot for an easy answer for that without the time given to. Maybe when you come back next year, we can go into it a bit further.
I can tell you a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. We could ask you that one question and turn down mics off and just listen to you the whole time. So I am a bit sorry, but you know, we wanted to get you some on that point. Hey, to wrap up with, we've got a couple of minutes. Do you have a highlight from 2023, and what are you looking forward to in 2024?
Yeah, my highlight from 2023, despite it being a really grueling election, and this was my fourth. I did the local body in 2016, and this is my third general election in 2017. For anyone who remembered it, was pretty gnarly. But it was our local campaign in Auckland Central, proving to everybody that it wasn't this fluke, but it very much was the power of the community. We ended up getting the highest ever number of votes of any Auckland Central candidate ever, against, you know, obviously the red wave in 2020 and then against the blue wave in 2023. So that was a really awesome achievement. We also, through putting forward evidence-based, strong values proposition policies of free dental, guaranteed minimum income, a fairer tax system, housing for all, obviously an environment that all of us can live in, we ended up getting the largest ever contingent of Green MPs. And while just to give people a sense of hope as well, while we have this right-wing government hanging on by a thread and cobbled together with, the three Scrooges, we do also happen to have the most left-wing parliament that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And what I mean by that is 21 seats explicitly to the left of Labour, with the Greens and Te Pāti Māori. And on top of that, we're starting to see an easing of the stranglehold of the two legacy parties of Labour and National, insofar as we have now an explicit, developed and evolved relationship between Te Pāti Māori and the Greens that Labour is not a gatekeeper or the key holder to. So I think we are also starting to see quite a substantive change in the way that our democracy is evolving, which to me holds the keys to a lot of hope as well.
It's
And
time
sorry,
to wrap
what
up.
am I looking forward to in 24?
Yeah, 2024.
Making this a one-term government and continuing to organise and rally our communities and remind people that the power doesn't sit with our politicians, it sits with them.
Hey, look, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope we can see you some more next year, because we drink up what you deliver, honestly.
You got it, boss. Apologies that I am so bad at sound bites. This is my problem.
Well, that's what the show is designed. We are world famous for the 90-minute hour. So that's what we do.
I love it. Hey, thanks so much for the time and for everything that you do. And yeah, shout out to everybody who is actually meaningfully engaging in this stuff. Because one thing that they cannot take away from you is your understanding of the world. And the more that we understand the way that things work, the more power that we have to change absolutely everything. So thank you.
Thanks, Chloe. Have a good time tonight.
Thanks so much,
and roll in the
Chloe.
house. See you, mate. All the best. Now, firstly, have a little sleep now. I apologize to people. Some people did super chats for questions. I made a call that I wanted to ask it as a real question. I think it was important to ask. So if any of you are unhappy with doing a super chat and not having your question asked, just stick us a message and I'll figure out how to reverse it or something like that. It's no problems at all. But there you go, Chewy. There's your queen. So your thoughts?
It's one thing to see it on Q&A and the morning shows. It's another thing to have her here.
She's very good. She's very good. Like, I know when she called you Chewy, I went, Chewy's melting right now. She said your name. Yeah, I know.
Pretty much. No, look, I think just the things about what to do to maintain hope and to maintain progressive momentum in your life when you're just looking at, well, we bring all the bad news to you. And it seems really overwhelming, nationally, internationally, that sort of thing. And I got to say, I really agree with the thing of a lot of this, I'm paraphrasing here, of course, a lot of this is completely outside of your control. There is nothing really, horrible to say this, meaningful that you can do about what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Parliament. But what you can do is look at the people in your communities, look at the Palestinians that live here.
Yep.
Those communities that are feeling very isolated, very far from home, and you can go to the rallies and you can show support for them and to show that they're listened to and that sort of thing. And the same sort of thing in your own communities. Pick something that you're passionate about. Make positive movement in your immediate surrounds. And then you feel like your actions have moved the needle a little bit. And it's through that sort of stuff that you build up connections. I mean, to be honest, that's kind of what we're doing, Pat. We've got our own little community, and it might be screaming into a bucket sometimes, but it's our bucket. And for us, it does feel like we're moving the needle a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. A little bit. I always think of, I can't remember the name of I think it's a Chinese philosopher that said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I mean, to be honest, we were one step, and we might be, in our journey of 1,000 miles, we might have completed 1 mile. There's still a long way to go, but we're further down that journey than at the start.
But just that's night 2 of our big fucking week.
Yeah, Moana Maniapoto tomorrow, guys, for our faves, and then Bomber on Thursday. So what a good week. Right, now I'm going to still show the super chats. Again, I thank you for them. Fire us a message if you want us to refund you them. I'll figure out how to do that. It's not a problem. But like I said, I think you'll agree with me, Chewy, that Gaza-Israel question was probably important to ask at that moment. So we went there. Carl wants to know business on top, barbecue on the bottom. And along with that, Jackson Media, thanks for the super chat. Are you wearing business socks too? You go on, give us a show. There you go. Bare feet. No business stocks as well. Peter says, thank you for the super chat, Peter. I'd say Luxon needs a visit from a ghost, but he's got Winston there already. And just so you know, we do have a couple of other stories to go into tonight. One includes a news story from today about the follow-on from our story yesterday about Luxon getting raked over the coals for telling everybody to pay for their own education and learning Māori. Well, not only he's doing it, but a whole bunch of national MPs have been doing it, which actually, like we said yesterday, is fine. The hypocrisy is them telling others not to do it. He is becoming very quickly do as I say, not as I do. Really, 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 really is. I apologize, we didn't ask you a question, but I wanted to acknowledge the super chat. Frosty OG, have you ever considered working with National? I'm imagining, actually, she may say that she has considered it for about a second. I mean, I don't know where it was. Kuki threw out a late apologies to the Queen. She knows the way. Then Dave also gives a late apologies. And then Kat had a question. I'm sorry again, Kat. The other thing is also one of the things back to my broadcasting days is if someone says they've got a hard out, I will hit it. I don't know if you saw the time, Joe, but it was like 30 and 34 seconds. I told her she'd be gone by 30 because she said 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And I said, the latest we'll keep you then is 30. And so we hit that time. And that's why I skipped a bit of that. And that's just respectful.
She was really clear before we went to air that she had an hour before because they're under urgency. So let's not take all of her time. Yeah. And that's respectful for people who work in broadcasting. That's respectful for the guest. And what it means is the guest knows that this could be a place that they can come and trust, that they'll go when they say they'll need to go. So it's really important for us to honor her when she wanted to be definitely gone by 30. And that's nothing to do with us, as Chu was saying. They are literally debating in the House as we speak. Kat's question was, this year teaching and research capability across 3 of New Zealand's unis has been smashed. Do you have any faith that this government will do anything about it? Well, we heard about what they're doing with the frickin' polytechs. They're taking down the centralized group of polytechs and they're going to leave them on their own, but then we find out that on their own they're all in trouble, so they need centralized funding to keep going. So I don't have any faith. Kuki says it is the way it is, a term that will die with the boomers. God, perhaps. I hope so. Perhaps.
Right. Let us do a couple of things. Just a reminder that we have a bit of a summer sale special on. Now, this is it's not really an end of line product. It's a product that's been around. We haven't done this during the season. It's called Beardy Boy Gear. It's based on some stuff I did earlier in the year and before. So we've got a few products left over. We've got t-shirts, which are yellow with a blue Beardy Boy face. That's blue. But see, we only have limited stock. And this is all the stock we've got because they're already all printed. And we've also got a black on black, which is kind of cool if you want to be a ninja, black face on black. And we are giving you, they're $50 each, but we're giving you 25% off if you use the promo code SUMMER. You'll get 25% off. Also got caps as well. As you see them right there, bhnshop.nz if you're interested. We haven't got mugs, sorry, Kiwi, but we'll be getting that into the early parts of next year. And we should probably also say, Chewy, a big thanks to our patrons, but I haven't opened that up yet. So let me just open it up now, because our patrons, everyone's beautiful, but our patrons just have a certain glow around them, just a certain other glow around them. Thanks to our patrons, our executive producers, our senior producers, our super patrons, and also, of course, everyone else who's been on board. Really, really, really thankful to our patrons. I'm always thankful to our patrons, but we're going to take like 12 shows off through the summer period. And we do get a tiny amount of things like YouTube revenue and super chats and that kind of stuff, which obviously we won't be getting at all through that period. So you guys are always valuable to us and we love you, but especially through this period that's going to be a bit quieter, it'll be extra much. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you. And if you are interested in becoming a patron, I've got so many screens around me, True, but I can only use one at a time for doing this thing. What page was I on? Was it that one? No. Was it that one? No. Was it that one? Maybe it was that one. It was that one. Okay, I found that again. I couldn't find it. If you want to become, that's not the thing. We'll go here. If you want to become a patron, you can go to Big Hairy News. It's patreon.com/BHN. This is the conversation that I had with Kirsten Corson a couple of days ago, yesterday. We ran out of time yesterday. What we're going to do tonight is I'm going to play you a clip from that, and then I'm going to release it to YouTube in its entirety. So Kirsten Corson from Zilch and Drive Electric on the cancellation of the clean car discount. And that's just one of the things that you can get on our Patreon. A bunch of other things as well. For next year, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing more for our patrons. We're going to be loading up more stuff, have more ideas, maybe do some memberships on YouTube. But at the moment, we have regular meetings and there's regular sort of stories that go up there in their entirety before they go out, or the only place they're there at all. I'm done, Chewy, with that bit. What do you want to say, sir? Where are we up to?
Well, I don't know if we really discuss this, but bugger it, we're going to do it anyway. You know that I hate saying "I told you so," and I know that you hate saying it. But what was one of the things that we said about Three Waters?
Yeah, 100%. That what's happening is the mayors that are all turning their citizen, their ratepayers against it, were leaving off half the sentence, which is, let's say no to it, but by the way, your rates will go up exponentially. They left that second part of the sentence off. They didn't actually give their ratepayers, their voters, all the information they needed to actually make an informed decision. That's what we were saying, Chewy. Well, have you got some news?
Yeah. Oh, just what we have on screen. The very town that we were talking about, that Gore was going to be absolutely screwed over if Three Waters didn't go ahead. And there we go. They need $465 million of capital investment in their water infrastructure. And if this doesn't go ahead, then that's going to be pushed onto their ratepayers or ignored, and it will fail.
Okay, I'm just Googling how many ratepayers in Gore. The Gore District Council has a total of 6,032 rating units. Does that mean how many ratepayers there are?
I would imagine so.
So divide 465 million by 6,000. I'm scared to do that. What will that come out as?
The figure that was considered the minimum and would cause the average annual water services bill in the district to rise from $1,340 to $6,770 by 2051.
I'm assuming that's for 10 years because that's $68,000 per ratepayer. So that'll be for 10 years. That's what it'll go up to.
And that's if nothing else goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
So
but
everything is the same.
And this is the thing, like we're in Dunedin, right? Gore's our neighbor, and actually Dunedin pipes are doing pretty well. Because the councils here have stayed somewhat on top of them, but Gore's our neighbor. So if their pipes fuck up and are, say, filled with salmon, the water doesn't just stop at the boundary where their region meets ours. So it's not just all about, this is why we're only as strong as their weakest link. So, Southland will be impacted by Gore, Queenstown will be impacted by Gore, Dunedin will be impacted by Gore, and that's why a overall approach was the better way to go. But of course, some people got involved and said bloody Maori a few times, and then it became an issue, which it never should have been, ever. So,
look at that. Council rate hikes a mature approach to help pay for the billions needed in infrastructure. Fuck's sake. So, every time you see someone in your local area kick off about rates going up, you can go, are you part of the rates association or something that has been keeping rates low artificially by putting off these things for decades?
Yep.
Uppercut yourself to sleep. You've kicked the can down to me.
Yeah.
That's in Wellington because their pipes keep exploding.
And the thing about it is I would consider this to be a national disaster. And when Christchurch happened, the whole country paid for that, got behind it and paid for that. I remember a conversation with the mayor of Rangiora who was very anti Three Waters until we did the research and realized the reason he's got new pipes and doesn't need to do it is because of the earthquake that we all funded that gave him new pipes. When Auckland had the cyclone, we all pay for that. And this idea of, fuck them, it's not our problem, it's their problem, is just, it's not how we do things that are national disasters. The pipes in Havelock North killed people. It's a national disaster.
They could have had that in Queenstown.
True.
The tourism hotspot of New Zealand, just as tourists come back, and then this jewel in our tourism crown is telling everybody to boil water or you could get sick and die.
Yeah.
Not really a great look. And like a strategic, like that's a local council sort of going, well, we don't have enough money to do this antibacterial thing in our water supply. but Queenstown's so important to our infrastructure. That's a national level fail, really. Yeah, and like we talk about Christchurch went from having some of the best tap water in the world to having
I remember
off.
traveling to Christchurch from Timaru and bringing water home. It was so good. I remember those days after I played on the escalators. Is that right? Have I got it right?
Actually, yeah, I don't think I mentioned the escalator, but that's kind of creepy. Yeah, so I mean, this is the whole thing. It's like that wrecked their water infrastructure, and yes, it's all been repaired, but the Christchurch is still chlorinating their water. That's how far it's fallen for them. So yeah, this kicking the can down the road of like, oh, we can't spend money on pipes because pipes aren't sexy. Pipes are they're the sexiest thing ever as far as I'm concerned. Water is going to be so important in the coming years.
Yeah.
And I worry that a government and the we don't want to put rates up and we're just going on vibes and climate change doesn't exist. They're dooming us to some pretty unpalatable future.
Yeah. Figuratively and literally.
They'll be dead by the time we get there, so who cares?
Yeah, but the other thing is how much of it is up to us, because if a mayoralty or a mayoralty candidate came along and said, guys, I'm real sorry, but your rates are going up, they have to, because this hasn't been addressed for the past 80 years. Would they even get close to getting in? So how much of this is on the voters? I mean, look at what's happening with National at the moment. Now, I've done a bit of thinking since talking to Kieran last night. You said you watched the interview, eh? Did you say that?
Yeah.
And him saying, and I've noticed it today, all of this National fingering Labour, pardon the
I don't like that, Pat. I don't like that.
Because Kieran's accusation is it's not because Labour left the cupboard bare, it's because the promises that National have had to give to ACT and New Zealand First, they don't have the budget for going forward. So they have to make an excuse that there's nothing there now because they can't actually pay for what they're going to do moving forward. It's just this whole kind of three waters paying for things. It's all sort of, the government didn't say, guys, it's going to be really tight. They said tax cuts. They said, $250 a fortnight to your average family. They said all these things about give. And it's, if you got to pull your belt in because finances are tight, you got to do it even if it's a hard message to tell people. But would that get people elected? So that's what I'm saying to you. How much of it is on us? How much of that is on us?
Yeah. I mean, I can speak for myself that whenever someone says lower rates and tax cuts and that sort of thing, I immediately get my back up and going, yeah, but what's that going to cost me?
Yeah, of course.
And I know not everybody thinks that way, but the lessons need to be learned. And I think we're probably learning them live at this point.
And I would love to now move on to our next topic because I cannot wait to show you David Seymour making an absolute goose egg of himself. Can we do that, please?
Does he fall down some stairs and his pants fall off?
I feel like you're in charge tonight because of what you're wearing. I feel like, yes, okay, sir. Are you the teacher tonight? Oh, teacher dreams. No, we won't go there. Let's have a follow-on story from last night. It's actually kind of got bigger news today, actually, and it is to do with the Prime Minister. Isn't it funny that he used to call Chris Hipkins the prime money waster? How they talk about projection, or that in primary school, what you'd say is, I am rubber and you are glue. What you say bounces off me and sticks to you. That's another way we could think about it. That he is very keen to tell public service. Now, remember, I told you this last night. National is trying to spin this to say this is only about bonuses. It's not true. It's very clear that Mr. Luxon said if you're a public servant, you need to pay for your education. You need to pay for your te reo lessons yourself, whilst he did not. That's what this is about. My old mum used to say, if I can trust you with the pennies, I can trust you with the pounds. Of course, we could say if I could trust you with the cents, I could trust you with the dollars. In other words, if I can trust you with the little things, I can trust you with the bigger things. So it's incredibly important to me that our politicians are honest. It's incredibly important to me that our politicians live by what they say. And it's a huge concern to me when they don't. So this conversation is going on today. It's also really interesting to see when Lloyd Burr, and he does a really good job here, talking to politicians about Kianga Ora and what it actually means. Because remember, what this government's told us is the English name makes more sense. The English name is what people understand. Winston Peters, 95% of people don't understand the Māori name. Now that means, Chewy, they should be changing Kianga Ora to its English name, which will be easier to understand. But what is its English name? When they ask MPs that, the MPs that want to change it, do you think they knew? Let's have a look at this story.
Kianga Ora was created in 2019 by merging 3 public housing entities. Its English name is
Homes and Communities.
That's Housing Minister Chris Bishop, who wants the Māori name to stay.
Why are you using Kianga Ora?
Because that's how it's known. That's its name.
Hang on, that's how it's known. I know Waka Kotahi is Waka Kotahi. That's how it's known. That's how it's known,
and that's its name.
Yeah. Can't we use the same logic? The Bish. Here we go.
Page 9 of his coalition agreement with New Zealand First, it says, ensure all public service departments have their primary name in English.
There you go. So they have an agreement with New Zealand First in their contract, ensure all public service departments have their primary name in English. They haven't highlighted the end of it. Remember that it says, except for those, I think it is something like that are directly related to Māori. So if it's a service department, a public service department that's only for Māori, they don't have to. Kianga Ora is not. That's not just for Māori. That's not a Māori department. So it should be in English. That's the agreement, Mr. Bishop. Why aren't you changing it?
Name in English. But Bishop's saying, not his one.
Kianga Ora is known as Kianga Ora Homes and Communities. So I don't know a single person who calls it Homes and Communities.
But that's exactly what his coalition partners want.
Significant majority don't understand that.
It should be called Housing and Communities. That immediately allows people to understand what it actually is and does.
It's called Homes and Communities.
Homes and Communities. Well, exactly.
Did you get that? Did you get how certain he was? The confidence he put out there as Housing and Communities, and it's not called that, Seymour, but the confidence he had, he really swung. He took a big swing at that one, and it's not called that. We have to look at it again. You ready?
It should be called Housing and Communities. That immediately allows people to understand what it actually is and does.
It's called Homes and Communities.
Homes and Communities. Well, exactly.
Both New Zealand First and ACT want Kianga Ora changed to Homes and Communities.
Well, I haven't talked to ACT or New Zealand First about it, so I'm not necessarily going to take your word for it, Lloyd. Well, I've got to get into the house for question time.
I can show you on the camera what they
How's that? A literal runaway. Lloyd Burr has just said, I've just interviewed your coalition partners. They want the name changed. The Bish goes, well, I'm not going to take your word for that, and runs away. That's what he did. He said, I'm not going to take your word for that, and runs away. So we're talking about ructions, right? We're talking about all this last 3 years. Obviously, speaking to an MP last night, Kieran McAnulty, he seemed to think it would be very, very unlikely for it to fall over, but it's not going to be a smooth ride, is it, Chewy? Should we just put it that way?
No, and every time I see Bish, what's the old adage?
Stinky, stinky poo bum? Is that the adage?
No, you see a turtle on top of a fence post.
Yeah.
And you're presented with a couple of questions. How did he get there? You realize he's been elevated way above where he should be, and he's completely useless. Yeah. And that's what Bishop is. He's a turtle on top of a fence post.
We need to get that t-shirt. Let's keep going with the story.
We're not going to go around pointing out small mistakes, but we'll get it right over time.
20 minutes later, Peters pointed it out in front of everyone.
Could the Minister urgently put out a press statement explaining what Kianga Ora means?
Peters himself.
He can't even say it.
Peters himself refused to translate.
Oh, don't be so arrogant. Mate, I was around doing things for Māori before you were born.
Many MPs also struggling.
Now, remember, and I've already said it in the last 5 minutes, but we're being told by our government that 95% of New Zealanders don't understand the Māori words for departments. The English word for the department is what they'll understand. Now, that means, Chewy, is all of these people should know what the English word is, because that's what they'll understand better. They'll be confused by the Māori name. They'll understand the English name.
Called it Housing New Zealand.
Housing New Zealand?
Yeah. Housing New Zealand.
I think a lot of these names are filigree.
Well, are you sure there's no discontent within New Zealand First and Act about the use of Kianga Ora?
It's not a conversation we've had.
The Prime Minister also coming under more pressure over this comment 2 weeks ago about public servants using taxpayers' money to learn te reo Māori.
In the real world, outside of Wellington and outside the bubble of Parliament, people who want to learn te reo or want to learn any other education actually pay for it themselves.
So therefore, he's confirming, and I haven't heard him ask this question yet, Mr. Luxon, are you suggesting you do not live in the real world because you did not pay for it yourself? And what a lot of them are going to do in this next bit is they're going to go, well, I had budget for it. Yeah, that's not your money. That's taxpayer funded money. That's not yours to take and spend on anything. That's not you. That's not coming out of your bank account. That's coming out of petty cash in your office. That's not you paying for it. But this is the little pivot they're trying to do, because this is, I mean, it's not as big financially as the Tesla debacle, but it's up there because he said, you heard him, public servants in the real world pay for themselves whilst he's not paying for himself.
Yeah. And
we'll
he
keep
is
banging on.
He is a public servant. He's a fucking MP. The other thing, and this is a bit of a tangent, and I apologize ahead of time. Parliamentary press members, I know you watch the show. I want you to do something for me. If you are talking to the Prime Minister and he is holding his tongue in that way that he does, that looks like a third lip, your job is to string out your question as long as possible so he looks like that for an uncomfortable period of time. Promise me, guys.
I'm sure they're onto it. Let's keep going.
Own te reo Māori lessons and many of his MPs. Have you ever taken te reo Māori lessons?
Yeah, I did take some lessons. There was a course offered here for new MPs.
Yes, I did. When I first became an MP, I took a small number of te reo Māori lessons, which I funded out of my MP budget.
You paid for them yourself?
Well, that was all part of it. Actually, it was when I was working at the Waitangi Tribunal.
So was it paid for by the taxpayer?
Probably was back in 1995.
Yes, I have.
And did you pay for them?
They were part of my parliamentary service budget.
He certainly seems to have a double standard. He sets one standard for himself and a different standard for everybody else.
You know now the cost of your te reo lessons.
This is the real interesting one. Why won't he tell us? Why won't he tell us? I mean, like, I think this is a smoking gun until he eliminates it. Why won't he tell us? Is he paying $1,000 a session to be done at his house privately or something? I mean, like, everyone has a spreadsheet. You know, everyone can just go and look at their business spreadsheet and find it. He won't tell them. He won't tell them yet how much his te reo Māori lessons have cost us, even though he said, if you're like us, you should be paying for them when he doesn't. He won't tell. He hasn't. Well, I won't say he won't tell us, but he hasn't taken it yet.
The cost of your te reo lessons to the taxpayer.
My office is bringing that together for you.
But 4 hours later, still nothing. Why is it so hard for your office to find out how much your te reo costs?
Oh, look, they'll provide that information in due course. Yep.
And that was 4 hours ago, and we're still waiting.
The thing about that is, Chewy, it might be nothing. It really might be nothing. But again, these guys aren't good at optics. Like, you're already being proven to be a hypocrite about this, right? Proven, unquestionable now. So what you should be doing is cleaning up this mess as quickly as you can. Oh, yep, here it is. Get it straight away. Not sitting on it. If it comes out to be like not a big deal, like nothing really, then it just goes to show what you say all the time, that he's not very good at this. Because the optics are now you're a hypocrite and now you're hiding something. Now, he may not be. He might just be slack, but that's what the optics are right now.
But and it's like, I just want to underline this. I have no problem with these guys using public money to learn an official language of this country.
I agree.
I think that's just something like, that is not the takeaway on this story. The takeaway is the hypocrisy.
Yep.
And I think also the disconnect about the way that they talk about this, like, you know, I had the party leaders fund, or it was provided as part of this, as my budget. Yes, but you do understand that your budget, everything that your office spends, is taxpayer money. So when you go, yeah, we know people are doing it hard and the cost of living's tough and that sort of thing, you realize that you have an effect on that. The car that you drive, that Parliamentary Services provides, the
The Toyota Corolla. Do you mean the Toyota Corolla, Chewy? That Nicola Willis is better. She better fucking get a secondhand Toyota Corolla with her new ministerial money. She better.
All of that is taxpayer money. And look, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it either. I'm just saying show us respect for it. If you're asking us to tighten our belts, show me how you personally are tightening your belt. You know, are we going to see out of national MPs the lowest spent on taxis and airfares and dinners out and Bellamy's that we've ever seen before? Yeah. Somehow I'm not holding my breath on that. Yeah. Like, there's practicalities of this job. I absolutely understand. But it's the not knowing, it's not showing the respect for it, and it's not realizing that yes, it's kind of a gotcha question, but it is a question that has some meat. You've been a hypocrite on this. Show us you're working. And doing a couple of te reo courses when you first started in Parliament, cool, that's great. Again, show some respect and continue doing it. Like, language isn't, I did 5 languages and now I can speak Spanish. Did 5 lessons and now I can speak Spanish. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And the other thing to be really clear on, right? And there is some scuttlebutt going on in the chat at the moment, is you can't use, it's a part of their budget. It's a part of this, it's part of that as a defense, because he's telling public servants to go and pay for it themselves like they do in the real world. The other public servants, right, it'll be a part of their budget as well. But he's standing up 3 or 4 days ago and he said, because he was talking about public servants learning, his example was, well, in the real world, they pay for it themselves. So he was saying public servants need to pay for it themselves, whilst he's a public servant not paying for it himself. And if it's a part of the budget, that's still not him paying for it. I don't believe, I believe there's some trolling going on, or there's some thick people watching right now. They're the only two conclusions, because it's not,
we've been really clear on that.
It's not his money if it's in the budget. If I get a salary to my bank account, that's my money. If my business has petty cash, which is my budget, that's not my money. That's the business's money. In his instance, that's public money if it's a part of their budget. It's just, it's black and white in that. And so if you don't accept that, that's on you. But to try and argue anything else, you're either a troll or you're a moron. They're the only two conclusions. Or you're an ideologue that refuses to see when your side is being hypocritical.
I mean, how hard would it be to absolutely front foot that question and go, yes, I have done some courses. I think it's an important part of the job that I do. It's recognizing that the language is important to the makeup of New Zealand. Yeah. It's funded by the taxpayer funded budget that we have. I did it because it's important.
Yep.
Job done. Yep. Story dead.
And remember, and remember, Chewy and I have no problems with ministers, with MPs, with anyone. Actually, go to your local wānanga learning Māori for nothing. It's when you say others have to pay for it and you are not. So it's actually got nothing to do. Should we talk about Teslas? When you say other people shouldn't be getting a Tesla cashback while you're taking it, right?
If you can afford a prescription, you should pay for it. A $5 prescription, you should pay for it.
So that's what it's about. And we're not going to debate this anymore, because it's clear that that's what it's about. So if people want to disagree with us, we'll always say, come at us with facts. Those are the facts. And I think if you look up the dictionary definition of the word hypocrite, today there is a picture of Christopher Luxon learning Māori in that place. End of conversation. Right. Let's I'm interested to get your take on this, Chewy, because we've got a conversation we're going to have now with Kirsten Corson from Drive Electric. We're going to talk a bit about the EV clean car discount. Now, I saw Kirsten on the news in the weekend, and I thought she looks interesting, so I contacted Drive. It was a great freeze frame for both of us. I don't know quite what was going on before that. I'm going to play you, because we're going to have full shows this week. I don't think we've got a full kind of 15 to 20 minutes to play. So tonight I will release the full one on YouTube. It's already there and it's hidden. If you're a patron, you've probably already seen it. But we'll release the full one tonight, which is about 14 or 15 minutes. But I'm going to play you a clip, and this clip is really about the clean car discount and why it's so important. Okay, and because Chewy is looking so fly tonight, Chewy, just so you know, I think you and I are going to stay visible during this conversation while it's playing as well, down in the bottom left-hand corner. So don't take anything off yet, or nothing off that can be seen by the camera. So this is a part of the conversation where we're basically talking about what is the country going to miss out on, and what's the bad thing about getting rid of the clean car discount. Let's have a listen. And the thing that I've been wanting to talk about is our new Prime Minister is quoted on one of the breakfast shows last week when they were talking about policy and legislation, that they're going to, quote, go through all the dumb stuff, get rid of the dumb stuff and the stuff that's not working. My understanding is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the clean car discount as of right now is not costing the country anything. It's either profitable or neutral, which means it's not dumb, it's washing its own face. And I believe it's made us one of the top 3, 4, 5 countries in the world per capita for EV uptakes. So if that's all correct, my question is, why are they getting rid of it? They seem to be doing something opposite from what they're saying. It's a smart policy and it's paying for itself. Can you speak to that for us?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think it's like all policies we see come in. Over time, they can be tweaked and improved. There are aspects of this policy that National don't like, and the aspects are that we're funding. We've got incentives in there for consumers, and consumers typically keep their car for 7 to 10 years.
Right.
And what they're wanting to see is some sort of incentive or some sort of program in place that we can see greater second, third hand rollout of electric vehicles. So certainly our conversation with National is we need incentives. You're absolutely right, Pat, that the clean car discount has, in the last 2 months, has got to a place where it is cost neutral. Up until that, it has been costing us millions. However, I guess there's a couple of reasons why we think incentives are worthy of investment. And if we look at, the recent news of Fonterra getting pressure from Danone and Nestle to say, yes, we want to work with you, but we actually need to see you cleaning up your act from a sustainability point of view. So we're a trading country, and we need partners that we can work with. And so those big international players want to see us being sustainable. So that's, I guess, a very strong reason to do it. Another reason is we spend $9 billion with the petrochemical industry each year, and a huge chunk of that goes offshore. And a fun fact, which I really like, if you're filling up your car with petrol, a 6.9 litre, you'll be paying $21 per 100 kilometres. If you're charging your EV at home off-peak, it'll be costing you around $2 per 100 kilometres.
Yeah.
So you can see that $9 billion that we send offshore, well, a huge chunk of it goes offshore. We can see the economic opportunity for Kiwis if we are able to electrify. And I guess that comes to the importance of an incentive program, because we need to be creating that second and third hand market so EVs are affordable for everyone. So you think about the impact on Kiwis, bottom lines or back pockets, if they could electrify and have extra money in the piggy bank each week instead of spending that with the petrochemical industry. So that's another key reason. And just to throw in another one as well, and then I'll let you ask another question, Pat. You can see I get quite passionate about this.
Yeah, for
waving
sure.
my arms around, it's all going on. So the other reason too is we spend $10.5 billion. Well, there's two reasons actually. We spend $10.5 billion in social costs for the 2,247 people that die each year directly related to our transport emissions. So a friend said to me yesterday morning, he was complaining about the $6,000 he was charged buying his ute. And I said, think of it as a smoking tax, because currently the cars we drive are literally killing over 2,000 Kiwis, and that's coming at a social cost to our DHBs that are having asthma cases, those sort of incidents coming through their doors. So I said, look, I make no apology of it, and you really don't need to be driving a ute. But I guess the fourth reason is too that Treasury are currently forecasting that we're going to spend $20 billion on international offsets come 2030 because we haven't got it together. So spending a couple of hundred, even $100 million when we're looking at spending $20 billion to go offshore to plant trees in third world countries come 2030.
Yeah.
And that's before we even remove the clean car discount. Treasury were forecasting that. So
Wow.
I don't know. For me, those are really compelling reasons to have an incentive program for electric vehicles.
You talk about the social, and there we go. Chewy, you are far more up to the play with EVs than I. Things in there, good, bad, and different. What did you find? I found it incredible. The other thing that that Karen said last night as well is only 10% of utes being bought are being bought for actual for work. Like people who
that's
need them.
absolutely true.
So 90% of them
true.
90% of them are just a choice. So National going on and on about the ute tax for farmers. That's not it at all.
Yeah. I mean, I said that right when they started talking about the ute tax, right? It was only going to apply to new vehicles, not all of the existing stock, the thousands and thousands of utes that are already here. The whole purpose, and I don't know, this seems really obvious to me. The whole purpose of the clean car rebate and the clean car standard, well, the rebate especially, was to get cars going through in the second-hand market. Lots of people keep their cars for 5 years and then they sell them. They wait till the warranty's gone and they flip them off the second-hand market. I have an EV. I got a second-hand one, so I didn't get the benefit of the clean car rebate because it had already been registered. What I did get the benefit of, that the rebate had pushed prices down because there were so many second-hand Leafs being imported and people trying to sell their like first and second generation EVs, and they had to make it competitive in that price. So I had a car that I had seen going for 30,000, under 20,000 within the space of 8 months.
Yeah.
So I am a beneficiary of that clean car rebate. And now, anecdotally from people that have talked to at car yards, this is absolute, like there's a peak now of people buying the stock that's available. And a lot of car yards are scrambling to register the stock that they have now so they can claim the rebate and bring the price down.
Yeah.
But once that stock's done and they can't do it, suddenly the prices of EVs are going to increase by like $7,500.
And then who's going to buy them?
We still don't have an answer from the government. Like everybody knows that in the EV community knows that road user charges are coming. The exemption from them runs out, I believe, in March, April, sometime around there. But there's no news about what's replacing it. And I don't have any confidence in the government to come up. Like, this is a perfect opportunity for them to completely review how road user charges and fuel excise works. But that would take long-term thinking. And it's very clear that these guys aren't doing it. They're coming at from an ideological standpoint. They don't, Simeon Brown has stopped projects on public transport and walking and cycling. It's definitely, hey, the petrol car is back and roads again. So I have no faith in them to look at this and be an honest actor on the best way forward for road user charges. Maybe they'll just go, yep, cool, road user charges, same as we do diesel. That's it. It doesn't solve a bunch of problems.
I think one of the most interesting things I heard last night with Kieran is, like, if this national party or national government was really serious about this, what they'd do is they'd carve out that 10%. Like, if you actually are on a farm, sure, no tax for you, but for the people, no taxes for you. But you remember that, the soup Nazi and Seinfeld? Anyway,
that shouldn't be hard.
Yeah,
but
I know, absolutely.
Stand in a city and count the amount of sign-written utes that go past for real estate agents, radio stations,
advertising companies.
If you go overseas and you look at tradie vehicles, like you go to the UK, they don't use utes, they use panel vans. The ute culture is us, Australia, and America with their monstrous urban assault vehicles.
Trucks. Yeah.
And they're just not, like, I see lots of things on Facebook at the moment comparing the tray tray space, the bed space of something like a Ford F-150, this enormous vehicle, and putting it next to one of those Japanese micro trucks.
Yep.
And showing that they had the same amount of tray space. You know, it's and I don't understand when there are electric utes on the market, and nobody is saying that is the one solution for all people.
Yeah.
But I think if I was a tradie in an urban area of a carpenter or a sparky or something like that, and I'm driving around town and going to my work site, and I'm not going off road, and I don't need 4-wheel drive, and you know what, having a vehicle to load power off the car's battery pack, having a 300-kilometer range is more than enough. Like, you know, to do all of these things, it's just the change in the mindset. You don't need something to do 500 kilometers in one hit. Most people don't.
And there's at least two of them available now. There's the Great Wall one, and there's the Rivian. And they're talking about, in America, they call it the Ford 150 Lightning. The Ranger over here, I think, is releasing one next year. I think maybe one thing that the government, and I'm not saying they got it wrong, but if I was going to compromise, I'd say maybe they could have waited for the ute tax until there wasn't an electric opportunity. Because then the people who even needed them could have gone, well, I'll get the electric. Because remember, they started it before there was any electric utes in the country. They could have had at least had the option then. But either way, they're like 90% of them aren't needed. They're a luxury item. They're a choice.
And I mean, I'm not a car guy. I'm a tech guy. That's my background, like tech sales and computers and stuff like that. And so I'm coming at it from this point of view. There is so much advancement in this field. Like 9 times out of 10 when I see, and I even see a couple of them, the comments in the chat as well, that are old info. Like, oh, it'll cost $20,000 to get a battery pack replaced. You know, you have to do that every 5 years. All of this sort of stuff. It's all wrong. It's all outdated information. And a lot of it is to do with the amount of secondhand leafs we have in this country that have the batteries that degrade really fast.
Right.
I mean, my own personal example, I have a car whose nominal range is 200 kilometers an hour. It's 5 years old. It's done 130,000 Ks, and there is no degradation in the battery at all.
Because you can test it, eh? You can get a test.
Yeah, you can test it. You can pull out reviews and that sort of thing. Like, think of how many cars you have kept for like 10 years. You know, most people are replacing their cars quicker. You can repurpose a battery that, like a clapped out old Leaf that'll only do less than 50 kilometers an hour. You can take that battery out. There's 2 companies in this country that will repack that battery as a backup battery for your house, for solar. Perfectly fine for a house, just not great for a car. And then you can get a new Leaf battery. There's another company that'll do that. So things are changing. People talk about cobalt and rare earth minerals. The new batteries that are coming through don't have any of it.
I was just saying, it's just similar to your phones. Like I've just looked at my battery on my phone at 88%. So it's 3 years old and it's lost 12% of its capacity because, you know, cell phones aren't the same, but there's a way you can actually look to see what the quality of the batteries are. There's JC in the comment.
Same with cars.
Jesus Christ is in the comment, apparently. Jesus Christ says, 40,000 Ks of my EV so far. I would never go back to an ancient. What's the I? It's combustible engine. What's the I? Internal combustion engine. Not a single problem to date. Leave the house with a full tank every time. There you go. Dave also says, I hate that utes became a status icon. So lame. A couple of other super chats about other things we're talking about. This was about Kianga Ora. Chris says, because they think most Māori are homeless. Peter says, I'm reminded of Sideshow Bob sticking on rakes. I think that's when we were talking about Mr. Seymour and Jackson Media for the $9 super chat. Appreciate that. Says, speaking of Luxon, is the Tesla not relationship property? There you go. Oh, you got one delivered. Nice. Now you just got to get your garage wired.
Car charger. Yep.
Very good.
So yeah. Do you know how much it takes? Like if I plug it into my house, how much it costs me to fuel up my tank?
How much?
To full?
How much?
$4.
So $4. So that's
worth of driving.
$2 per 100 Ks.
Yeah.
$2. Yeah. So that's not even a liter of fuel cost.
And here's my hack, and I'm just going to boast because I feel very clever about this. So behind my workplace, there's a car parking building that has a charger, and the car parking is free on Sunday. So I plug into the charger, which is also free. And I do that every week. And now I don't pay anything. So I'm just driving around on free power.
Very good. Okay, guys. So tomorrow I've been chatting with Moana Maniapoto, and she has said yes to tomorrow night. We always put our upcoming guests out there with a sprinkle of salt to make sure we don't anger the media gods who, when you announce someone, they don't turn up. And then Bomber on Thursday night. Then that's us for the year. And there will be shows every weeknight that we normally broadcast. So not public holidays. But if it's not a public holiday, Monday to Thursday, there will be a show. There will be some highlight shows from the year. We'd love you to still be involved. They'll be up on all the places there, and they'll be played out as live at 9 p.m. Right? So they'll start at 9 p.m. They'll be played out at 9 p.m. and you'll get to watch them as live. And then they'll be there to watch on demand as well. I'm also spending the next few days getting a bunch of clips, some of the highlights of the year, and going to be uploading them through the time period we're off as well. So if you follow us on Twitter or on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to YouTube or Facebook as well. Those clips will be going to all of those places. The shows will be going to all of those places, or on Twitch as well. And we'll keep providing you some content before we come back. And as a reminder to all our friendly business people who looked at some of our ideas for advertising and stuff next year and some kind of funding ideas, we've sent emails back to you guys. If you're a business or a business owner, or you're involved in business and you want to look at doing some work with us, we've got a pretty spectacular start to the season opportunity when we come back. That's sort of a 50% off deal. The last month, last 28 days, we've had 900,000 views across all our platforms. And every single one of those views could be an advert for someone. 900,000 views. And if you're a fan, don't panic. We're not talking about 7-minute ad breaks or anything. There's lots of ways we can do it. We can embed them at the bottom of the screen. They can just be a part of what we're doing. There can be merch over in the corner with signs, all sorts of ways we can be doing it. But as you'll be aware, you guys who have watched us for a long time, we've been doing this for a long time. And much like the clean car discount, this thing needs to start washing its face a bit. So in saying that, very thankful to all our patrons, for people who bought merch and stuff as well. A couple of people bought the Beardy Boy merch this morning, and I've already put it on a courier to you. And business people, get in touch. What are we? bighearingnews@gmail.com if you want to see the proposal idea for the start. Maximum of 3 advertisers. And I'm looking at the emails tonight. We might already have 1 in place. So only 2 more to do the special offer at the start of the year. And that will help us fund this, which will help us keep on bringing it to you lovely people. Just like that. HUE.
Yeah.
All right. So now Moana said to me today, is tomorrow the mini budget? The 20th? That, remember Kieran said on breakfast?
Promised.
Yeah, it was on the 20th. So obviously we'll be having a bit of a look at that tomorrow. But we're having guests in every night for our last week, our fan favorites, our faves. Moana tomorrow night, who was suggested by numerous people. And I'm sure we'll do some covering off of the mini budget as well. So thanks for being with us tonight. I'm sorry we didn't make it to 90 minutes for our 60-minute, 90-minute special. We're only at 81 minutes and 40 seconds. But we'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hearing News. All right.
Cheers, fam.